Derek Johnson.
I see it.
Ian Trottier, nice to meet you, Derek.
Likewise.
First time I'm hearing you, first time you're hearing me. Derek, give an intro if you're not familiar with Derek's work. Please take a moment and introduce yourself to viewers and listeners.
Well, so my name's Derek Johnson, and back in August 24th, I had a video that went globally viral, and it's remained globally viral, that along with all my other work. But you can find my work on thedocuments.info. But basically, the short gist is there's two powers in the United States of America: federal government, military. And there's these federal continuity directives, is what they call them. The first one was issued January 17, 2017. The most recent one's April 2023. And it shows how the federal government's under continuity government. That means all three branches of government are under continuity government. When the federal government's under continuity government, it means that we have a military occupancy. All right, and that's found in the Law of War Manual. It's the Department of Defense's Law of War Manual, and it encompasses the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is military law. And by all the laws and orders put into place by Franklin D. Roosevelt,
there you go.
In 1941. Well, in 1941, the first World Powers Act is what President Trump used in March 2020 when he became a wartime president by laws and orders, which really makes him a commander-in-chief, though. And so when you go back, though, the Law of War Manual was issued June 12, 2015. President Trump rolls on the escalator June 16, 2015, 4 days later. And the Military Justice Act is the United States Supreme Court. They wrote this in 2016, but they didn't pass it until his $770 billion defense budget in 2017. The Military Justice Act was the United States Supreme Court clarifying in 2016, the first piece of paper we've had in history that clarified what our founders wrote. So they clarified military law supersedes civil law. They clarified the president, commander-in-chief are two separate roles, and they clarified the commander-in-chief is separate from the federal government in this act. So it shows you that Donald John Trump is still commander-in-chief. Now, he did something no president's ever done. When he issued 50 U.S. Code, Chapter 33, Section 1541 in March 2020, in Executive Order 13912, which is the federalization of 1 million National Guard active duty, that's a direct military order. He made it a federal order. And then in April, he gave the Secretary of Defense equal authority to federalize the National Guard active duty and also use all regular armed forces. Donald John Trump is still your commander-in-chief. Not president, he's acting commander-in-chief, but he's in a like a counter side. It's like a backwards sting operation. So when he says we're going to obliterate the deep state, that's what they're doing. It's a lot of what we call comms in the military and optics in the military. But you know, there's a lot of general support me, but there's a few that can't because they're in certain positions that they can't do so based on who they are and their popularity. But the generals that no one knows about, I've got a ton of support from there. It's all in .gov and .mil sites. Everybody can read it. There's nothing, I don't have any subscriptions on my stuff, so that the documents.info, there's no subscriptions. It's just my service beyond my service. I did get to serve as long as I wanted to in the military. I'm an Army veteran, and service was cut short. And so I feel like this is my service beyond my service, and I show everybody a chronological blueprint of all those laws and orders. And you can follow it from day one. And you can see that the military is in complete control. The National Guard are out of their states every day, their state jurisdictions and the United States jurisdiction. You know, they had an old motto, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. Well, I've got pictures, over 35,000 pictures, and that's just me taking what I can take during the day. Like today, I couldn't take any pictures because I'm at this event, but the pictures I take, it's the National Guard out of the state jurisdictions every single day. They're federalized. The only person who can do that is the President of the United States of America. 10 U.S. Code, Chapter 12406. When we raise our right hands, if you're a veteran, you raise your right hand under 10 U.S. Code as well, so Title 10. All right, so you can't have one without the other. You can't say, well, I don't believe that. And then the one thing that puts the cherry on the cake, the icing on it, is January 20th, 2021, when the whole world, not just U.S., thought that they witnessed Joe Biden having an inauguration service. It's the United States Army who performs all presidential inauguration services. They use 4 cannons, all right? It's also the Army, well, so let me reiterate. So the Army with the presidential inaugurations is the Old Guard, the Presidential Salute Battery, the 3rd Infantry Division. All right, so it's very key. It's also the Army who does all presidential funeral services. And you can find this on usstate.gov. You can go Google this. All right. On January 20th, 2021, at Joint Base Andrews, Donald John Trump had 4 cannons. On national TV and international TV, when Joseph Biden raised his right hand, one, he swore in at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is a violation of the 20th Amendment. All right. And then he had 3 cannons. He had a Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. on January 20th, 2021 had a full-grade military funeral service. Go look it up. Go look at all the funeral services. Go to YouTube and look at all the way back to JFK. 4 cannons for inaugurations, 3 cannons for funeral services. Joe Biden had 3 cannons. President Trump had 4. It's all right in front of you.
So the theater that we're seeing transpire in D.C. and this fellow that is referred to as Joe Biden, there's speculation that it could be, or that it is a British actor. Is it a clone?
And he's an actor. So President Trump used a lot of World War II references while he was in Pearl Harbor references. He did it the other night on CNN. He talked about some things that were old references. He also used Eisenhower the other night as well, and some things that Eisenhower put into place. But he did a lot of World War II rhetoric. Well, in World War II, Roosevelt, with the Philippines, they put in an actor to face the media, right? And then they called it back then exile. The actual president was in what they call exile. He was behind the scenes in full control of his military, and Roosevelt and the U.S. brought him back and forth from Philippines to the U.S. Right? And they called it the Commonwealth Act number 671. And now you can find that on like Gazette.gov. So anyway, you got to put that in Google, Gazette.gov, and then do Commonwealth Act 671. It's all there. It's the same laws and orders. So when President Trump says, if they're going to investigate me, they're going to investigate every president before me immediately, that's what he's talking about. He's using 90% of laws and orders he didn't write or pass, along with what he did write and pass. So you're watching history repeat itself, especially World War II. President Trump said that in March 2020. He said, different war, same scenario as World War II. He specifically said that, and the media said, what do you mean by different war? He said, well, it was like different war, invisible regime we're fighting. Same scenario means same laws and orders.
Donald Trump's done the background work. He's done the preparation. We've got a counter coup going on here. It's planned. Donald Trump is playing his cards right, it seems. He's letting this, again, to use that term, theater unfold for the American people to see that. A couple questions for it, Derek. First off, I'd like listeners and viewers to know when and where it was. You said you served the country, you're in the Army. When and where it was that you began to realize that there was something wrong in the military, in the country. What set you on this road of discovering what's happened? It sounds to me, Derek, that these could be meshed with what would be considered huge ops. I'm not saying that they are, of course, but it's kind of along those types of lines. These are high-level military strategic points of reference. What caught your eye that this is what's happening? I got to go down this road to investigate. The other thing, because I think you've encompassed that. The other thing I want you to talk about is what's going on in the state of Florida with Ron DeSantis, and why isn't Trump and DeSantis getting along? All right, thank you.
Well, first we'll do the second one first, because that's kind of fun. So Ron DeSantis, Florida law, he can't even breathe anything to do with president. All right, Florida law, a sitting governor cannot run for president unless he's not a governor. So in order to run for president, he would have to completely step down as governor, all right, then he can talk about whatever he wants to talk about, launch campaign, all that. He can't do that until he steps down. Or his other option is to be reelected, and then the new Florida Congress pass a law, or change the law rather, for where a sitting governor can run for president. That's the only way he can do something. All right. So that's that. Now, what set me on this, and it's all military talk, but understanding why I run and different people, I tell people first off, stop trying to play good cop, bad cop until you understand the precinct and the laws of the precincts and the orders and the bylaws, etc. Understand that first, and then you might figure out who's a good guy, bad guy. But there's a lot of guys that are playing good roles that might be bad dudes. And there's a lot of bad dudes that people think they're bad, but they're actually playing a role to smoke the rats out. Because I just had this question earlier, well, how come the military, if the military's in control, how come they didn't come in and arrest all these people? Would you appreciate it? What they didn't want to do was take out just the top level guys. You got to get all the rats that work from under them. All right, and this is not just a military movement. This isn't just a military sting operation for low level. This is a world operation to clean out. We're literally, no matter what you believe, I'm a Christian. I believe it's a biblical movement first, and then it's a spiritual warfare, and it's also an information warfare. But when I was in the Army, a lot of stuff happened that I wasn't supposed to see. It was not military bearing. And all my grandfathers, so my grandfather was a merchant marine, my other grandfather was Army, my great-grandfather was Army Air Corps, and also my dad was Air Force, my uncle was Air Force, and all my great-uncles were military. And I was the kid that always listened to my elders. I used to sit around and listen to them talk. My dad had buddies who were CIA, Secret Service, so I listened to them talk. So I was always that kid that read stuff that most people didn't read when they were a kid. And then when I got in the Army, I saw a lot of stuff that wasn't military bearing, was not military law, was not military orders, regulations, statutes, acts, codes, etc. So I started seeing that, and I was cut short of my service. And there's a lot of veterans out there that's read my documents, and they're like, oh, I don't believe that. And I'm like, well, why would I be saying this stuff? Now, we kept it quiet for like 7 years. And I went through a real dark phase as a veteran because I'm like, why would my own country do that? Why would this happen? And I never could put the pieces of the puzzle together. But that's what happened was I started reading Obama's executive orders. And being someone who knows the Bible pretty well, I'm sitting there going, Arab, why are we doing this in this executive order? Why were they in Syria helping the Arabs? Right? And you go back to the 6-day war in Israel. Israel seized 1 million Arabs that had to step down and denounce their Muslim and come over to Christianity. So when you look at the spiritual warfare of it, it all started making sense. And then one just order led to another, and one led to another. And when President Trump, on the campaign trail, he said 2 things that were very, very important that my great uncles and grandpa and all those guys talked about, that older generation of World War II, and the ones that lived through JFK. There were 200 generals said, never again will we let happen in this country what happened under JFK. If we get the chance to take it over again, we're going to take it over. Now, they weren't collectively. They were separately. But President Trump on the campaign trail in 2016, he looked at Jeb Bush and he said, I have 200 generals backing me right now and more to come. Then he said another thing. He said, never again will we voice to the public what's going on with our military. Because if you find out, guess who else finds out?
The enemy.
The enemy. And he said, if you want to know, you can join. And that was, so those brought me on. All right. And then, the night that they won, I'm the only one that has this picture. I took this picture that night. Fox News put it up. It was never in the night, 2016, wee hours in the morning, 4:56 a.m. Central Standard Time. We got it stamped. President Trump and Putin side by side. It says, ready for reset. Reset was in single quotations. You don't just single quote anything. Ready for reset. I will work with Trump. All right, that was that. Then you move forward. The Federal Continuity Directive, the January 17, 2017, was the first Federal Continuity Directive issued, and it said all the other FCDs before this cancel out with this one. And on January 20th, 2017, when President Trump was inaugurated, it was 2 military officers came up behind him. They had headbands on. Military intelligence and Judge Advocate General. He was setting the optic tone right then at the gate, what our country was about to go on. It was military occupancy from the get-go, because that first Federal Continuity Directive came out January 17, 2017. And they use mirror dates, which is cool. January 17, 1961 was Eisenhower's farewell speech warning America about the military-industrial complex. So they used the January 17th date for that. There's a lot of mirror dates that would take a while to go through. But that's kind of the gist of it. I was so mad about them putting me out of the military. I mean, I retired. I had full retirement through the Army. I only did one stint. You're not supposed to do that. So there's a lot of stuff I don't talk about because I didn't make this about me. It was never about me. I wanted to figure out what the heck was going on and why all this looked so whack and why all this wasn't military buried. And so there's only been a few veterans out there. It's like a little slack, but other than that, I mean, I have a lot of generals backing me, a lot of colonels, a lot of full bird colonels, lieutenant colonels. It's mainly officers, from captain higher. But still, that's what happened. I just kind of was mad about it. I started reading, and one thing led to another. When President Trump got elected and they started dropping all these comms, and all these executive orders started coming out, it all formed. I was like, you can't have this without that. You can't have this without that and that. It just formed this blueprint, and then when it clicked, it clicked. It was just like, wow, it's a counter psyop, because the real psyop was what they did to America all these years. Getting people not to read, taking the Constitution out of schools, taking the Bible out of schools, and all the stuff they crammed down in. So,
cursive writing, math.
Yeah.
Cursive writing,
yeah, cursive writing. They took that out. Yeah, exactly. In math, exactly. I mean, it's all been that was a psyop, but the counter psyop started 2016. That's when the line was drawn in the sand. It's kind of like the Alamo. That's why President Trump went to Alamo, Texas. He had a lot of optics like that, showing people. And it just forms this blueprint, and he's not supposed to show it. It's like he's doing his job as commander-in-chief back here, while the military does this, and the National Guard are out in their states every single day. I mean, that's, once again, there was the Gitmo aircraft flies out of Miami here, Fort Lauderdale, and Jacksonville. Was in the air a while ago, flying out, going to Gitmo, call sign Gitmo. I have media access passes for Gitmo in July this summer, so for the military tribunal. So, I mean, they're there. The New York Times reported this in December 29, 2021, mid-2023. How'd they know to put that way back here? So.
All right, you talk about the military tribunal coming up this summer. What's that?
So military tribunal is just where, when we talk about the arrest, I tell people, look, I don't know who's arrested. I don't know. I just know Joseph Biden had a full-grade military funeral service. But I don't know who's been arrested. But those headbands, Judge Advocate General, Military Intel, who collects evidence, Military Intel, who judges it, JAG. All right, so those were important. But right before that, 2016, after President Trump won, he said, we're going to keep Guantanamo Bay open. I will revoke Obama's order. He did it. Executive Order 13823, he revoked it. But he said this in 2016. He also said, we're going to load up Guantanamo Bay with tens of thousands of bad boys. Tens of thousands. All right, well, they did. There's construction going on down there, $500 million expansion. We know that. It's on record. When he revoked that order and kept it in, I mean, it's telling everybody. So military tribunal is basically where they'll take all the bad dudes he's talking about. They'll face a military court. It's not a grand jury. It's nothing like. It's a straight up military court. You'll be dealing with Judge Advocate Generals. And you can't plead the fifth. I mean, if they got dirt on you, they got dirt on you. So treason and fraud, they do have deals for that per se. Like with this operation that's been going on, they would have been, whoever was arrested would have been doing a deal way back here. But crimes against humanity, they're done. President Trump said what? We're going to bring back national firing squads on live TV. Right? He said that just about a month and a half ago. The next week, the governor of Idaho signed in firing squads again. I mean, I know some people maybe wouldn't agree with that in one way, but then again, how do we get this evil in the world? I mean, look at all the murders, look at all the street gangs, look at all the stuff that takes place, and the trafficking. I know people don't want to address that. I know that's a hot word on some of the channels out there, that you can't say certain kinds of trafficking. But look at the stuff that people think doesn't exist, and it does. I mean, I know multiple guys who have done operations on this for multiple years, that it's legit, it's real. I've seen just a little bit. I didn't get to serve as long as I wanted to, but I've seen enough to know, hey, this stuff's real. It does happen. And that's the people that's going to be going to the courtrooms and facing these punishments for the crimes they've done for humanity. And like President Trump says, the haters and the trolls don't realize what we're doing is going to make everybody's lives great again. It's nothing to do with how you live your life. A lot of people don't realize you're only as free as your surroundings allow you to be. And it's guys like me who keep you free. And by the Constitution, I don't judge you whoever you want to serve, whatever you want to love. I don't care about that. If you're not hurting somebody or harming somebody, if you're following and doing what you're supposed to be doing as an American citizen, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Now, the polar opposite is don't cram it down people's throats either. So there's a hairline there. My dad always says, hey, you're splitting hairs, you're splitting hairs. Well, we can't be doing that. But there is a way to live your life and pay into our foundation and our system, as long as you're not hurting or harming somebody, but be able to live the way you want to live in harmony, right? And contribute. But it's like I tell people, you're either adding to the problem or you're contributing to the solution. So which one is it?
So this develops and rolls out as a pre-devised plan that it seems the commander-in-chief, per your definition, would be Donald Trump. What does that look like in the next year leading up to the election? Will there be an election? Will the coup be revealed and the cards played and the tribunals? What happens in the next year and a half?
So he's been making a lot of comms, as we call it, just drops in media. So starting November 15th, 2022, he started saying, hey, we're gonna decimate street crime by 75 and 85%. Well, that's martial law talk. All right, and then he's been saying recently, we're gonna tear down bad and ugly buildings. We're going to build up beautiful cities. Recently at Waco and also at CPAC, he said we're going to go in these cities. We're going to take the homeless off the streets, take them to these FEMA camps that we've set up with FEMA. And by the way, on all those federal continuity directives, on the very front page, Department of Homeland Security, the FEMA. All right, so that's very important. So we're going to take the homeless off the streets. He said, one, it's sad that we've got all these homeless hooked on drugs. Then we got a lot of veterans mixed out there as well. But then he said it's also not fair for us, taxpayers and citizens, to have to walk down these city streets in filth as well and wonder if we're going to be shot and knocked over the head as well. So it's a two-way street. So all that talk, all those speeches, paired with the National Guard that are active, COVID was all this was an operation. If you read the 2018 Federal Continuity Directive paired with his 2017 National Defense or National Security Strategy, it talks about the pandemic word for word, as if you would have read it back here in 2017, 2018, someone said, this ain't gonna happen. If you read it now and you remember what we lived through in 2020, it's word for word what we saw, but it was written way back here. They did this as a test run. In March 3rd, so he declared that last national emergency March 27th, and he federalized National Guard on March 27th. On March 30th, he told the whole world, I'm tired of getting this question too about why did he endorse the jab? He didn't. You had to go back and look at the jab he was talking about. In a press conference March 30th, 2020, whole world sees it, you can still look it up. 36 million doses of hydroxychloroquine. It's right there. 1 million doses of chloroquine. It's all right there. He went to a military installation for his treatment. He showed the whole world military is separate from what's happening in the federal government. It was the FDA and the CDC and the NIH that went against him. In 2019, he had an executive order for influenza vaccines. It has the CDC listed. Come to 2020, he had another executive order. CDC's not in there. There's another line in the sand, another Alamo moment. Come across this line. They went against it. They're the ones that issued the Moderna, the Pfizer, and the Johnson & Johnson. It wasn't him. So people have to see that. And when you read these strategies, it says people have an individual responsibility. I can't make you do something. And it would be wrong for me to make you do something. Because if I can make you do something, then you can make him do something. Right? And we don't need that. So everybody has an individual responsibility. So when you look at, that was a plan. That was a test run in the military, as we said. That was a test run to see how many people would sit at home and how many people would wear masks. Well, 99% did it. Like that. All right. But what the bigger plan was to prepare for this to go in all these city streets. We can't have people in the streets when the military goes in there to clean off all these streets. When they go in, like El Salvador recently did, 40,000 soldiers herded down, not soldiers, but there were soldiers herded down 40,000 MS-13 gang members, like cattle, to a new federal facility in El Salvador.
Yeah, so it's, yeah.
So what President Trump's comms are and what the future looks like, that CNN town hall thing was loaded full of comms. She said there's no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence. That's leading for tribunals. There's nothing President Trump could say to people on the other side. Me, I already know, but even some conservatives don't know. There's nothing he could pull out like he did and convince some people. That's the military's going to do that in these tribunals. So all of his comms of the night were what he was doing. It was all MAGA people. It was all Republican asking questions. New Hampshire has always voted Democrat
Right.
for the president. Why wouldn't it be Democrats asking questions? So it shows you the stage. Right now, I don't use Q a lot. I know it's there. It's military intelligence, but what I think God put me here for was for the average, everyday American to go, here's the precinct, the laws and orders. You learn these and read these, because everything I show people, I have no subscriptions. I don't charge anybody anything. Here's all the links to .gov.mil. Here's the chronological order of how it happened. You got to start here, though, with the beginning and work your way up. And you got to catch up fast at this point. But I show the average American how you understand laws and orders from the ground level, because the military works from the top down. We, though, work from the bottom up. And I show that. So I try not to use a whole lot of Q, even though Q is correct. Q said way back when, before we go into the next stage of operation, tribunals and all, that the president, POTUS, Q Plus, will take questions by the media in a town hall setting with rigged questions. It specifically says this on Q. Now, like I tell people, you ain't got to believe it. You ain't got to like even laws and orders. But it's all, Q says, how many coincidences do you need before it's mathematically impossible? And I can show people mathematically impossible by all the things that's been put in place. All right. So I show people that. So the next, I don't know dates. That's why I tell people, nobody out there, no podcaster is saying, oh, this date and Trump's going to be arrested. All that stuff was just, I tell people, laws and orders, live your day by day by day. But what he's saying, it's going to set up all these helicopters right now flying. It's Black Hawks, Lakotas, and Chinooks out of their state jurisdictions in the middle of the week, no state emergencies, no natural disasters.
National Guard.
It's National Guard out of their states, but it's Chinooks, it's Lakotas, medical, and also Black Hawks, a lot of medical. And they're flying around cities, a lot of highways. They're flying with call signs, the letter E in a number, R in a number, G in a number. ERGs, Emergency Relocation Groups, which are found in the Federal Continuity Directives. All right, so they're mapping out all these places, because they're not going to go in one city one day, one city the next. They're going to have to hit it all at once, and it'll be an emergency alert system. All right, I don't know what's going to happen, but what happened was a lot of podcasters put out there 2 years ago, oh, the ABS is coming, like as if it was going to come the next day, and it fatigued a lot of Americans out there on this. And then it became conspiracy theory type stuff. And I'm like, it's not. Laws and orders are not conspiracy theories. But there's going to be an EAS somewhere in the future. They're going to swarm those cities, get the people out, the homeless out, and then they're going to clean up those street gangs, as President Trump said. The MS-13 and all these other BLM, Antifa, all of them, the ones that are still out on the streets. So this is an all-around clean out from the top down. And people just have to be patient. Like I tell people, you're learning how it's like to be in the military. Even through the most chaos, you learn to go, it's hurry up and wait, and just be patient. You know, they want to get it right. It's not about being right or wrong, it's about getting it right this time. And we don't need any loopholes. And when they get in the military tribunal, there's not going to be any loopholes. There's going to be like, just like that. So that's what people are going to see. Yes, there's going to be an election, because the military occupancy, what the military occupancy does is take over elections. And the military takes over. So when you go back to this past one, November the 3rd, November the 6th, right? What was it, 4th or the 6th this year? Anyway, on 11/4, from the 11/4 Law of War Manual, which talks about military occupancy, Fox News put out on November the 24th that the National Guard were going to be standing around a lot of the places where you vote, precincts. There's no coincidence with that. Everything's precise and calculated. So, yes, there will be an election, but it's going to be a military occupancy again. And President Trump says that's our final battle, 2024. So that's biblical kind of type. Armageddon, we call Armageddon the final battle. All right, so all this stuff's pretty biblical. And so the military occupancy, they'll see how that election goes. That's why President Trump said on CNN the other night, once again, he was like, she said, will you accept the results of the 2024? He said, if it's honest. Well, he's talking about the military occupancy.
Yeah, and I think he did a really good job directing where that interview went.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Derek. Let me ask you this question. I had Brigadier General U.S. Air Force Robert Spalding on the show about 3 years ago, before the lockdowns and the COVID stuff. And he's written a book called Stealth War or something of that nature. And he said this country had been invaded by a stealth enemy. Certainly, Donald Trump got to a point where he says, okay, I'm no longer running on the Democratic Party. I heard him say run as an independent, self-financed. Because when I was living down here in Miami, he spoke at the ballroom over there before being a candidate. And he, of course, went through some type of journey himself that showed, this country isn't what I thought it was, right? This isn't the place where I want to leave my children, and I don't want to leave the planet this way. So he went through that journey. You've gone through your journey. Let me ask this question. You can comment on either one of those. Let me ask you this question. What is, he's talking about fake news. We know mainstream media is part of the Council on Foreign Relations. It doesn't have American corporations' best interest. It has the globalist corporations, globalist centralized government and currency at their best interest. It's all about dismantling the Constitution, destroying the United States, like you said, from within. But Derek, you're on to this plan that's been kind of written out and systematically designed.
Right.
Sounds nice to know that we've got that type of organized combat actively working to restore, or at least retain, the United States and the Constitution. However, what is the deep state? What is it? What is the enemy? What is the stealth enemy? What is it? Where does it come from, there?
Well, it goes way back. You'll have guys like about thousands of years ago, and it's built up. I try to do just for your basic American to understand the Organic Act of 1871. The Organic Act of 1871 is exactly where we sold back to the British Crown. All right, Ulysses S. Grant signed us over on the Organic Act of 1871. We basically borrowed from Great Britain, right? Very people we fought our independence from. All right, then
very language you speak.
Yeah, and then the bar exam, the bar was established in the 1870s, immediately following the Organic Act. All right, so you have that. Then you move to 1889. You had Stoutenberg versus Hennett, big law case, right? Big law. Stoutenberg versus Hennett. It definitively defines Washington D.C. as a foreign territory. All right, you move forward, and then you look in 28 U.S. Code 3002. Shows United States. It just says United States. It doesn't say United States of America. It says United States, federal corporation. All right. So you can piece all this together in so many different ways, and then you parallel that with President Trump, all of his speeches too. Globalists, elite globalists, lobbyists, defense contractors. I mean, it's multiple names, multiple people. He also has said, things of
military-industrial complex, in other words.
Basically, and that's what he's saying. Defense contractors and lobbyists are basically military-industrial complex. And then he talks about. He said in January 2021, he said, "I've pissed off a lot of rich people. I'll have to go away for a little while." Well, I mean, we're talking about global elitists. And see, a lot of these people are not known to be. When he says an invisible regime, he really means that. There's names that I probably don't even know. because they know who they are in the military. But then you naturally have people that everybody knows, George Soros and the Rockefellers, a lot of those names that people know. But no one ever knows who worked for them. No one knows who did their dirty job. So there's a lot of people all over the world. That's why he also had the former president of Brazil with him at CPAC, right? So this is not just a U.S. thing too. This is a world operation. And then a lot of his quotes stem to that. Matter of fact, he had a quote, November 15th, 2022, and I tell people, is there anything that Donald Trump hasn't said that hasn't come true? And people, nope. Everything he said is happened. I said, well, that should show you the plan already. But then on November 15th, 2022, there was that. It was one of my most viral videos, but I decoded that very well. And me and my buddies, we looked at it, we decoded a lot more to it, even a deeper decode. But he said something that night that everybody just didn't seem to hear, but he said specifically, my administration has kept us out of wars for decades and decades. Now, President Trump is calculated and precise. And I know, I tell people, don't worry about the haters. They already in a war. But for people who know what's going on, laws and orders, my administration has kept us out of wars for decades and decades. Now that is right there, it's beyond phenomenal, because it either means the generals in the past have been planning this, as I believe, or he's talking futuristically, meaning my administration, because he's talking about the 4 years visual, and then this 4 years will be non-visual person. And people say, well, how could he run again if he's president now? So he's not president, he's commander-in-chief, but he wasn't even president before. What people have to understand is he was still operating under a military occupancy, right? And the federal continuity directives. So it was the military who brought him in, right? So a lot of people got to see that, and people can say, well, how could he be a commander-in-chief if he never, if he never served in the military? And I'm like, well, they did make him president. Like, they did make him a visual president, but it was the military. That's why Executive Order 13848 is so important. It's one of my most important ones I talk about. It set a trap for all elections, but he wrote it 2 months before any election under him, which means the only evidence they had of voter fraud was 2016 and prior. So that means the military set up a sting operation. Hillary didn't dump enough votes because they didn't know how many votes organically Trump was going to get by the regular people. So see, she didn't know how many they dumped. And it's the best sting operation anybody can think of, and it's real simple. It's nothing complicated. They didn't know how many votes to dump. If they dumped too many, then it was going to be very blatant, obvious. Period. So they didn't cheat in the 2016 election because they didn't know how many votes to dump. But it shows the military was already stepped in and had them cornered. That's why they immediately went to Russia collusion. They immediately, that was their, even though that was all planned too, but that was their plea deal. See, they already had them here. And it's all right for everybody. So, I know I diverted a little bit there, but still.
No, let me go with that diversion briefly. We'll wind down. I appreciate your time. But what I like to direct people that listen to me towards is something called the U.S. Grand Union Flag.
Oh yeah. December 3rd, 1775.
Washington and Franklin met at a congressionally approved meeting called the Flag Committee, Cambridge, Massachusetts, where that flag was adopted. What does that flag look like to you visually in your mind? How can you describe that for viewers? What's it look like to you?
To me, it looks like I said this I went on a tour back in September, October, and I used that flag. I used that flag as an optic for everybody, because diverting really fast and going back and coming back to it. The way I set it up to the audience, I always said you need to know your military foundation first. You need to know that the Army came first, the war articles came second, so the Army, June 14, 1775, war articles, June 30th, 1775, The Navy, October 13th, 1775. The Marine Corps, November 10th, 1775. And then the Grand Union flag, December 3rd, 1775. I said, look at all those long before the Declaration, right, long before that. Now, Lexington and Concord had already happened. See, the battle had already happened. The battle started before they even established the military. Right, so I do those timelines. And I tell people, I said, now that flag you see, the one we talk about, I'm like, that came June 14th, 1777. On the Army's birthday, they swore it into Congress. But I was like, the Grand Union flag to me was, I said, it was the ultimate troll flag for me. Because our founders were also British too, a lot of them. I call it the old British versus the new British. They weren't Americans yet. They hadn't set it up yet. We didn't have the Articles of Confederation yet. We didn't have the Constitution yet. So I said, to me, the Grand Union flag, it looks like a troll on it because in the little square up here, it looked like the British flag, right here. And then the stripes, as we know it. I'm like, to me, to me personally, it was a troll flag going, we're going to take our same flag and put it on a stripe. We're going to troll it. That's what in modern day language. In my modern day language, right. That's my interpretation of it.
This is how I respond to it. I say, that is indeed the British Union Jack.
Right.
Because if you mirror that flag to the owners of the ships that brought in the Boston Harbor tea, they caused the tea revolt, no taxation without representation, that flag is that of the British East Indies Company.
Right.
It's the same flag.
Right.
So therefore, on the show, I've had a guy named David Icke. Maybe you've heard of him.
Part of it.
Okay, he's a British historian, and he said for years he's trying to educate the English people and now Americans. He says that London is a former Roman. It was an established Roman trading center, a financial banking center, trading center, known as Londinium. And in 1055, William the Conqueror, 1055, was unable to conquer London. And on the City of London website is that charter that gives London the same authority to supersede the power of the monarchy, because it finances the monarchy. It's the whole British system, right? So our founding fathers and even the Pilgrims, they came to America. So we follow the money. Where do you think, Derek? You served the country. This fellow here served the country. I never did in the military, but thank you both of you. Where do you think along this line, and if Trump's not talking about his administration or the administration, what's he talking about? Who's he alluding to? How Pope?
Blow that whistle.
Do not let him speak out like that. You need. Would you Yes, it's the Pope. Yes, it's the Pope. Yes, Derek.
But I'm telling you, like, that's what I try to tell people. I'm like, it's you either want to get it or you don't.
Yeah.
Because it's like you have to go so far back in certain ways. You know? So that's amazing you brought that flag up. That's so fun. That's how I met the guy over there doing off the show here. Yeah, we were out on a tour, and so he remembers the speech I gave with the military foundation. So, yeah.
This guy with the football?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I met him a long time ago. Sure.
All right.
Yeah, so we're a lot of here. But
45 minutes. Thanks for your time, man.
No problem.
Hey, look, Americans got to be educated, right?
They have to be.
And you're educated.
I'm all right with that. I definitely appreciate you having me on here. So.
All right, so let's. Do you have a question, Raj?
No,
all right,
I'm done.
So
I want to know about the Pope. That's all I want to know about.
Oh, did you have a comment on that?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to do it to you, but you saw President Trump, right, with the Pope in the hand, right?
Yeah.
You know. Oh, you got to go watch that video. So when they're holding their hands down, taking their pictures, when President Trump went on the world tour, President Trump's messing with his hand.
Messing with the Pope's hand? That's Francis?
So, when you're the Queen of England, right, so he walked in front of the Queen.
I remember
and the media was it's all planned.
Oh.
Right? And then, so he's showing you the ones that were playing along who wasn't. He's showing you the good versus evil. Right? So, obviously, Kim Jong-un, he stepped across. They shook hands and went down in Korea. He's our first president ever did so. So that shows you who came on board. And then when he sat in front of the Queen, he broke royalty, all that. No, that's the mainstream media is also under a code, 47 U.S. Code 606, war crimes of the president, which is a wartime president. So the Queen, he sat in front of her. That was an optic that they didn't come on board. All right, then the Pope, he's sitting there like, you gotta watch that video. It's out there. President Trump's hand, and they get their hands down when they're taking the picture.
Yeah.
You know, President Trump reaches down there and is like messing with his hand like that. It's the funniest thing
What's
you've
that
ever seen. He's just messing with him. Man, the Pope, the Vatican's going down too.
Does that answer your question, Roger?
They're all tied together. The Pope, the Queen, well, not anymore, but the Pope, the Queen, the pigeons. They use the pigeons.
They use the pigeons as messages?
Yeah, they use the pigeons,
Anyway.
All right, so Derek, what you're basically saying, in the final few minutes, what you're basically saying is that the Commander-in-Chief that has graciously allowed to play to host the event, we're here on his property. In 2024, will he return to the Oval Office in the White House?
I personally think that, this is my personal opinion, I believe that he rides off to the sunset because when the military tribunals happen, this is going to be something that Americans have never seen at this level. It's going to be a lot bigger than Nuremberg trials, the Hague Conventions, Geneva. It's going to be a lot bigger than that. And I believe he passes the torch and he rides off. He goes plays golf. His face is going to be on Mount Rushmore, and it's going to be one of these. It's a biblical, monumental, historical operation. It's going to flip the world. It's not just the U.S. I mean, we're talking about Christmas Island. There's a lot of different places where these tribunals are going to take place. It's a world operation. The world's going to see. It's going to be that kind. And then I believe he passes the torch to somebody and says, whoever that is, I don't know, but I just believe that his age and what he's done, what he did from 2017 to 2021 visually, and then what he's doing as Commander-in-Chief in the background will be more than enough to go Mount Rushmore, world history. I mean, he said it in January 2021 in one of his last speeches. He was like, your great-great-grandchildren will be talking about this. I'm like, your great-great-grandchildren will live to talk about this. So, I mean, I think he rides off. It's going to be that big. And I love President Trump. People take that wrong when I say that. I'm just saying, look, what he's done, when people realize what he's done in this operation that's in place, I think he rides off and passes the torch. And I think he'll be assisted, whatever it is, help transitions, whatever that. But it's gonna be a different kind of transition in government, cleaned out, and everybody will know multiple levels. Like his wins and losses, 232 wins, 18 losses. Come on, they know what's going on. They know what's going on. All the losses came from states that are battleground states, the Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. So it's all an optic. I think he rides off, and that don't mean if he wants to be president, then great. I'm there for him. I'm actually being pushed to be an advisor for him. That'd be cool. If it's him, cool. If it's not, I'll do my part wherever God wants me. I think he rides off.
Let's just throw one little last thing in here, Derek. You've got RFK Jr. now talking out against the fraud with Fauci. Is this in talking about the systematic design behind the COVID hoax? This is probably quite alarming for most Democrats. Of course, he's a Kennedy Democrat, which is kind of a
perfect. It's perfect. You cannot tell a Kennedy no. The Democratic Party cannot go against the Kennedys. Watch. He's going to drop so much. He's going to drop so much on them. It's perfect.
Of course, they're Catholic, and they're governed by the Pope.
But they can also be changed. People can be changed.
Right. Okay. So, what does that do in regards to the upcoming election?
Well, I mean, he and
Trump's system.
They know each other. They're friends. I believe it's all part of the plan, and they'll expose that to the people too. It'll be exposed that way. So But
Ladies and gentlemen, Derek Johnson. Derek,
thank you.
thanks for joining the show.
For having me. Appreciate it.
What do you think of the renaming of the Army bases? Like Rucker's now Fort Novosel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know, I personally don't like stuff like that. But then again, I mean, you know, in 100 years, no one's going to remember that. You know, it depends on what they keep passing down to people. So, but I personally don't like it, but you know, I guess some will.